Hello, welcome back to another video. Today I'm just going to run you through the bike that I just finished the Transcontinental Race on. So here it is. This is my Mason Definition Integrale, which is, it must be the 4th generation of Definition. I actually used the original Definition way back in 2015, which was the year I managed to win it. And to be honest, the bike's kind of the DNA is pretty much the same, although it's kind of gradually been improved step by step over the years. And yeah, this is the latest version. So all the tubing on the Mason Definition is from Dachi. So it's an aluminium bike, as you might be able to tell. I've not really ridden carbon for such a long time now, and yeah, alloy is great. I think a lot of people have a lot of sort of stereotypes about how aluminium is, but I mean the modern kind of tube forming techniques and welding techniques means that you can get really good ride quality from an alloy frame. And yeah, well, I mean, I just rode 3,000 miles in a little under 2 weeks, so yeah, no complaints there. So yeah, frame is the Mason Definition, as I already said. One of the upgrades on the latest version, the Integrale, basically means it's all the cables are internally routed. You can see there's not really any external cables anywhere. Is the fork. Now this is from Data, and it was designed in collaboration with Mason. And essentially you can see it's an internally routed carbon fork, and it also gives a little bit more tyre clearance compared to the original Mason fork. So I'm running 35mm tyres here. I'll go into a bit more detail on those in a second. So yeah, gradual improvements, and well, having spent the best part of 2 weeks sat on it, I can tell you that it is an excellent bike. So onto the build kit, and you can see Groupset is basically 12-speed Ultegra. Nothing special, 2x, it's a 50 tooth front chainring, and I think it's 36 small chainring. I was originally going to do a 1x setup, but as sometimes happens with these things, everything came together quite last minute. And there's a few key parts I wasn't able to get in time to build a 1x and test it thoroughly before the race. So eventually I just stuck with what I knew. So Ultegra, to be honest, I think it's my favourite road group set. It just does the job. It's not too heavy, super reliable, not overly expensive to get replacement parts for. And yeah, I mean, this has done, as I said, like 3,000 miles without missing a beat. So yeah, Ultegra is great. Onto the cockpit, and Data provide all the tubing for the frame, and they also sorted me out with some parts. So I'm on the Super Zero RS bars. So these are integrated bars, and there's also a matching stem, which has all the sort of internal routing on there. So as you can see, there's a number of spaces on the front there, and all the cabling goes inside. So it's pretty neat, and yeah, I think it just makes the whole package a little bit tidier. Aero bars extensions are also from Data. I can't remember what they're called actually, but yeah, they're kind of the fairly basic Data bars, and yeah, they work really well. I would say I'd spent quite a lot of time sort of messing around with the bike fit as I was going along. I only got the bike 10 days before. You may have seen the video of building it, and I had been training on my old bike, and in a very similar position to that I had 12 years ago when I was last racing TCR. And to be honest, I was starting to feel my age and getting tight spots all over, and I ended up swapping to these bars with a bit more stack on them, or spacers, so you can stack them up. I probably should have had more in hindsight, because the first part of the race was spent just quite uncomfortable getting adapted to the position. I basically did a whole bike fit as I went along, so the bars went down a little bit in terms of like the angle of the extensions, and the saddle went quite a way forward, and I spent quite a lot of time just filling with my cleats. So that was in the first kind of week of the race, and if you've seen some of my videos, you know the race wasn't necessarily the smoothest, but by the end I felt great and was flying, and the bike felt amazing. And yeah, I kind of love this bike. I mean, I've not ridden another road bike in the last 10 years. I've pretty much exclusively been on the Definition model, or the Resolution, which is kind of a steel version of it. And yeah, fantastic bikes, really rate them. You can also see on the bars, I put these Redshift drop grips on. Now, you don't see many of these on road bikes, and to be honest, I did wonder whether I'd have them or not, but I was really glad I did in the end. It just takes the pressure off your hands. And a lot of people finish TCR with like pinch points and numb hands. I had none of that, so especially on the gravel sections, I could just relax my grip on the drop grips here, and they just give a little bit more absorption for the vibrations. They give a better pressure point on your palms, and yeah, I finished TCR with no hand problems. So yeah, really pleased with that setup. So elsewhere on the bike, I mean, one of the big sort of talking points, I suppose, is the wheels. Now I'm actually running these brand new 5AM wheels from Hunt. So AM stands for Aero Maximised, and these are the brand new limitless wheels from Hunt. So these are like the top ends, you know, aiming at the World Tour, kind of aerodynamically optimised, pretty lightweight as well. They've been winning group tests. They've been performing really, really well in wind tunnel tests. So obviously I was going to use them to ride all the way across Europe. So I went for the steel spoke version rather than the carbon spoke version. For me, the carbon spoke version, although I run the carbon spoke wheels on my mountain bike and gravel bike, for this it just felt like maybe a bit too much of a risk. The steel spokes I feel have a slight bit more compliance, and with a smaller tyre on compared to gravel or mountain bike, I felt that maybe that might be more important. There was a small weight penalty, but even so, I think they're like 1.35 kilograms, which is pretty damn light considering the depth of them. The other interesting thing is the front and the rear wheels are different profiles. So the front is a bit more aero, it's 58 millimeters and pretty wide. There's a really wide kind of aero profile. And then the back, basically in all the aero testing that Hunt did, they realised actually the front makes the biggest difference, and the back, because it's behind the rider, behind the frame, you don't get the same benefit. So you could put that front rim in the rear, but there's no point. You're just carrying extra weight and not really gaining the benefit. So the rear rim is only 55 mil deep, and it's a bit skinnier too, therefore saving weight, and that's how you get down to really, really low system weight. And yeah, considering they're aimed at the World Tour, I just rattled across the continent over crappy roads, off-road sections, probably hit some potholes I shouldn't have hit, and I really can't fault them. They really were excellent. So yeah, would definitely recommend those. Tyres, in the end I just went for what I knew. I didn't go too fast, so I didn't go for the top end super fast rolling tyres. These are a notch down. These are the Pirelli, they're the Race TLRs. So they do one that has a slightly better rolling resistance, but the compromise is there's a bit less tyre protection on the sidewall. These tyres are really, really good. I mean, you can see the tread. Considering they've done 3,000 miles and some pretty hot temperatures too, which obviously increases wear, with a bit of luggage on, they look excellent. I'm pretty sure I could do the same again. However, talking of extra sidewall protection, I did have one puncture, and that was entirely my own fault. I just basically wasn't concentrating on a slow uphill on a tarmac road, and I pretty much managed to hit the only sharp stone on the whole of the mountain. Put a pretty big slash on the sidewall. This was on day, well, I don't know, 5 or 6 or something like that in Czech. It was a pretty bad day actually. If you check out part 2 of my video series, you'll see that is the day I ended up in hospital later on in the day. So this wasn't the best start. But yeah, I cut the sidewall, and yeah, it was a pretty big cut. It took 3 plugs to seal. I ended up running at pretty low pressure for a while, but eventually it sealed, and actually I had every intention of getting a new tyre, but then I got a bit distracted by visiting hospital and all the kind of medical issues I had. And in the end, I just rode it all the way to Kalamata in Greece. So yeah, probably did about nearly 2,000 miles with those plugs in the side, and they've been fine. And to be honest, I think they'll carry on working now. So yeah, I guess if you repair a tyre properly, it can get you a pretty long way. Elsewhere on the bike, I mean, contact points, I've already touched on the handlebars. Saddle, this is an ergon saddle. I can't actually remember the model. Oh, it's SRS Pro Men. So this is a newer road model. It's a bit shorter, a bit of a wider front and a nice groove on it. Again, really comfortable. I didn't really have any saddle issues. Only had to get the pseudo-chrome out pretty much on the last day. And I think that was mainly because I wore my shorts a little bit damp after washing them in a hotel room at one night, and it just sort of rubbed a bit of skin off. But yeah, no real saddle issues. So yeah, definitely works for me. Obviously saddles are quite personal, but yeah, I do rate the ergon stuff. Pedals, I went for these touring ones. They're PD ES600 pedals from Shimano. They're essentially a one-sided XT pedal. I was going to get mountain bike pedals, but I saw these, I needed them last minute. They were 20 quid cheaper and I could get them next day. That was kind of the decision around them. I mean, they look better, but yeah, they were a bit of a pain. I wish I'd actually just ridden mountain bike pedals, because the amount of times I tried to clip in on the wrong side made them quite annoying. But yeah, they did the job, and yeah, it definitely looks better in a bike check, not having mountain bike pedals on a road bike. While I'm talking about contact points, I'll also mention the shoes I was wearing. So these are the Physique, I don't even know what model it is, but they're kind of, they're cross-country race shoe. These are the wide fit. Now, I do like Physique shoes, but the kind of, the fit's all over the shop. So these are the wide ones. They felt really long. They just basically felt like a size 11. I run size 10 with a wider sole on. So they were a bit baggy, but they were quite comfy over the duration. And I also fitted these ergon inner soles in them. So basically I had no hot points on my feet. These are by Sole Stars. And yeah, basically it worked really well. Elsewhere, luggage, well, you can see it's all tailfin, as you know. So I've got the tailfin speed pack on the back here. I'll pull all the bits out in a minute. Went for a half frame pack and also one of the long top tube bags. And yeah, I'll run through those and what I carried in them soon. Gadget wise, you can see here I had an exposure boost R on the back of the seat post. I didn't really use this one. That was my backup light, and as you can see, it probably would have been obscured by the bag here. I did have every intention of using the saddle bracket, but because I had my saddle quite far forward for the TT position, I wasn't able to squeeze it in there. So I had it on there. I did actually use it in tunnels. I just sort of flashed it off to the side and it illuminates the side of the tunnel quite effectively. It makes you look pretty big on a bike. I did also have my main light on the back here, Cat Eye Nano 60. The main reason I went for this is because Tailfin actually make a specific bracket which bolts on the underside, so it gives you a really neat solution. So I got that beforehand, and then actually I found it to be really good, so I got the matching front light as well. I tend to have a nice little small blinking light on the front because you don't always need your main light on. For example, if it's kind of raining or just sort of lower light during the day, I find it better to have a flashing front light, and I don't necessarily want to waste the battery of the main light on something like that. So it's always good to have a second light. And to be honest, the first few days when we were in Norway, it was almost light sort of 24/7. Only really got to dusk, so I just ran that rather than use my battery. Thought I'd just save it, it saves charging, and yeah, that worked pretty well. The main light, as you can see, is an Exposure Toro. It's actually really old. I think this might have been the one I used back in 2015. Still works great. The exposure stuff is really fantastic. Lasts a long time. It's expensive to buy, but yeah, it's one of those things you invest in and it lasts for a long time. I ended up using the stem plate, which worked pretty well. The only downside was that the button was then quite hidden away, but that was easily resolved by getting the remote switch. So I had the remote switch on the outside of my aero bar, and that was just easy to toggle the light on and off, toggle through the modes without having to take my hands off the bars. I also, as you can see, have a bell on there. That's mandatory as part of the rules on the TCR. You need a bell. I think basically you need to be able to comply to all the countries in Europe, their road law, and some countries require a bell, so you have to have it. If you don't have it, you can't race. And then between the bars, I just had my Wahoo Element Roam 3. That's the new one I got just before the Hellenic Mountain Race. It worked really well for TCR, do rate that. I did also forget I had the satellite shifters on the end of the TT bars as well. Now these are actually 11-speed shifters, so it took a little bit of work to get them working with the 12-speed group set. Again, it was all last minute. We ended up having to run a cable down the inside, so the new 12-speed is actually semi-wireless, so the shifters connect remotely to the rear mech and the front mech. However, we ended up putting a cable down the bottom so that the satellite shifters could then talk to them as well. Took a bit of a faff. I mean, I'll probably get some new shifters if I use this setup again that work remotely, but you know, time was tight beforehand, so sometimes you just got to do what you got to do. Talking of some of the mandatory equipment, you do have to have reflectors on the back. Now I was able to just use reflective tape, so you can see on the back of the stays I've got some red reflective bits, and also on the inside of my tail fin arch. That's kind of a safety thing. You're on the roads quite a long time, so yeah, it's good to have that stuff, and it does make you feel a little bit safer. Elsewhere, I haven't mentioned the bottom bracket. Enduro bearings XT15, you probably know by now, I've been using those a number of years, faultless as always. 3,000 miles is probably only just getting bedded in for them, so there's loads more life in there. And yeah, really rate them. And then bottles, you can see I've got these two 1 litre Zephyr bottles. In order to squeeze everything in, I mean, I do run a 60cm frame, so I do have probably a bit more space than most. But I just use these tail fin bottle droppers just to get the bottle cages really low down. And that meant I could squeeze both in there. They just about fitted in there, easy enough to get in and out. And yeah, it meant I could carry 2 litres of water, which I found to be enough. But my plan was, if I needed extra, I could always just put something either in the frame pack or just tuck it into the mesh on top of here on the speed pack. And yeah, it kind of worked pretty well. So next up, this is probably the bit you've all been waiting for. I'll dig into the bags and show you what was in there. So I think I'll start with the top tube bag. And to be honest, this was, I didn't need this size really, apart from the fact I decided to take my film camera. So pretty much the entirety of this space was taken up by my film camera. And I also had a couple of rolls of film. They're not canisters of film. They're not in there because they've been sent off to the lab. So hopefully I'll have some really nice photos. One of my goals for TCR was to shoot 2 rolls of film, which I did. So yeah, so that was that. So I could have fitted everything I had in here in a much smaller bag. And yeah, I don't regret it because I've got some cool photos, hopefully. But other things I had in here. So if you've seen my videos before, you'll know it's stuff that I want to get close to hand. So I had this little adapter to charge my Di2. If you've seen the actual Shimano Di2 cables, they're pretty chunky, pretty heavy. But I found these little AliExpress adapters. Work quite well. I think probably next time I take 2, just in case, because I was a bit paranoid I'd lose it. But it just runs on a USB-C cable. That worked really well. I had a bit of chewing gum. That's an empty packet, but yeah, had some in there. Just sometimes you need to freshen your mouth up. Had a boot kit. This is the restrap one. It's been used a few times just in case I had a tyre issue, which I did. Also had some more quick tyre repair things. So I had my dyno plug, some darts. You may note there's a lot less than when I started. It took 3 to repair that front tyre, and vulcanising glue, vulcanising cement. This is the stuff you use to patch in the tubes, but it melts, basically it melts rubber and it melts the darts into the side of the tyre. So I was actually able to give it like quite a solid repair on my front tyre when I had issues. And as I said, it lasted a good amount of the distance. I also had some chlorine tablets, didn't actually use them for drinking water, but it's good to have them. Also had a valve extender. I did have some tubes with long valves, but if I needed to buy extra for any reason, you have to bear in mind the front rim's nearly 60mm, so do need an extender, otherwise that can catch you out. And then I kind of had toiletry stuff and some other things. I had a second set of earphones. I did have 2 sets with me. Had some tyre levers. Actually ended up having to buy some paracetamol one day because I felt pretty rough. Yeah, check out the race video to find out all the details about that. But essentially, I got stung by a bee, had a massive reaction and ended up losing 24 hours and spending some time in hospital. So yeah, took a few days to get going again. And then I had toiletries, so a little mini thing of toothpaste. Had some pseudo creme, which is now on the floor. Only had to use that on the last day, which is a good sign. Had a little, decanted some sunscreen into a little bottle. Had some hand sanitizer for sanitising hands and other areas, i.e. saddle areas. You do have to take a deep breath before you do that though. And then some lip balm. To be honest, my lips were destroyed from the very start, so I probably wouldn't rate that particular one again. And then I've got some lube, so Squirt wax lube. I did actually wax a chain before I started, and I just topped it up with this lube, and it was great. I went through sort of, well, there's half a bottle left there, and plus another one, so bottle and a half over 2 weeks, 3,000 miles. I'd say that's pretty good going. Right, onto the frame pack. Now I'm going to start on the non-drive side. There's a little document wallet or pocket, and in this I keep my documents. So there's my brevet card and my passport in there. I also had some power banks. I had a 10,000 milliamp and a 5,000 milliamp. These are Nightcore ones, the fancy carbon ones. To be honest, I probably could have got away with one, but I just feel like it's always good to have 2 just in case one gets damaged or wet or lost, as these things can happen. I also had my helmet lights. This is just my trusty exposure joystick. Had that for years, works really well. It's a good backup for the main light. Also use it on descents, and by the end, when you're just really tired, I just whack both on. When the battery life isn't too much of an issue any longer, I just used it all up, trying to save my eyes. Had a toothbrush in there. I'm not into cutting the handle down because when you're just ruined at the end of a race, the last thing you want to be doing is brushing your teeth like this. Doesn't really weigh anything, fits in there fine, so I don't see any point in cutting it down. And then I also had a spork. I don't think I actually used it that much, maybe once or twice. Always good to have. You never know when you want to eat a tub of ice cream. Sometimes you can get like a little bowl of pasta from a supermarket or something, so it's useful to have. Had some spare spokes, and then this was my little first aid kit. Some diarrhea stuff, some little swabs with iodine in, some basic bandages, just, you know, if you've got a bit of gravel rash. Also some antihistamine. Good job I took it. After the bee incident in January, I've started taking it with me. And again, I got stung by a bee, but this time I had a massively intense reaction. So this is Zyrtec. I took this within a minute of being stung, but it took a while to kick in. And in that meantime, yeah, I had a really bad reaction, ended up in hospital. And as a result, I ended up getting an EpiPen. I've never used it before. I should probably check out how to use it. But after that, I was probably a bit shaken. I asked the hospital to give me a prescription for an EpiPen. So yeah, I think I need to be taking this on future races because yeah, I was lucky I was able to get to a hospital pretty quick in this instance. But if I'd have been more remote or in somewhere, you know, like Kyrgyzstan on the Silk Road or something like that, could have been pretty bad. But yeah, go and check out that video if you want to know exactly what happened. So onto the frame bag, and well, my plan beforehand was to have this not overly full, so I could carry extra food, and on the whole that was the case. So I was always able to put extra food in here, and obviously maybe going into the night I'd be wearing more layers. That gave even more space for the extra food. So in here I had stuff I wanted sort of, you know, at short notice, or didn't want to have to unpack everything at the back. So I had these, I had quite a lot of sample kit actually from Albion. These are their new sort of lightweight arm warmers / sunscreens. There is some UV protection and a bit of warmth. So I used those I used them more as arm warmers than arm screens, to be honest, because it was getting quite hot with arm screens on there. So yeah, I use these, you know, when it was a bit chilly, and because they're white, a bit of UV protection, I was probably able to wear them slightly longer than the normal kind of arm warmers. Also had the Pertex gilet. I'm a big fan of gilets. I think they're a really flexible piece of kit, keep your core warm. I was able to chuck this on descents. Sometimes I just had it in my rear pocket, but other times I just had it in there. Yeah, really useful piece of kit, and you can layer it up with loads of other things quite easily. I also had some sample leg warmers from Albion. Again, keep your legs warm. It was pretty cold in Norway. I think in the past editions of TCR I've just taken knee warmers, but as we were pretty much starting in the Arctic Circle, I thought leg warmers would be better. And these, yeah, well, it was -3 or -2 I saw on my Wahoo on the first night. Some people saw -3. These kept my legs warm enough. So yeah, good piece of kit. I also had a little folding backpack. Kind of used that if I went to a shop or on the way to a hotel or checking into a hotel when they wouldn't let you take the bike into the room. You could just put everything in there. It makes life a little bit easier. I then had, well, these gloves ended up in here, but I was wearing them quite a lot. These are pretty much a last minute purchase. I had been using those POC bright orange gloves for a while, but mine are worn out. I wasn't able to get any in time. These are from Derive, but the main reason I got them is because of the elastic interface, the sort of chamois style palms. To be honest, they were pretty cheap and I thought they'd fall apart, but they've proven to be really good. I love these elastic interface palms. My hands have no numbness, and they've stayed together really well despite being abused. So actually, considering they were 25 quid, I think I would rate those. I had this little dry bag tucked in there. This was kind of electronics. I kept it in there because you never know when you want to just top something up, and I could just grab it going into hotels or wherever I was going. Bag full of cables. There's 2 fast chargers, and then I had this case just with a couple of extra GoPro batteries for my camera. To be honest, this was pretty annoying. It took up a lot of space, but you know, when you're making videos about a ride, you kind of need to charge. So I ended up taking that. I would prefer to have not taken the case, but is what it is in that instance. I also had some waterproof gloves. I actually started with 2 sets of warmer gloves. I had my some really old DHB like wind stopper gloves, but unfortunately they split, thankfully kind of in the second half of the race. So I ended up just getting rid of them because they were useless. But I also brought these in case it rained. And in the second half, when I was in Serbia, it was actually quite cold some mornings, so I just ended up wearing these over the top of my mitts. And they're quite good, they just take the chill off. I primarily took these with me because I was a bit worried that it could be really wet and really cold in Norway. And the last thing you want is really wet, cold hands before you've even started. Yeah, these come on pretty much all of my races. They fold down really small, so there's not really any excuse not to take those. I've got a packet of biscuits. These are strawberry cream cookies. I think these got me through the finish parkour, so I'll enjoy those in a few minutes. I also had a merino neck warmer from Albion. Again, I wore this quite a lot in the early stages, and sometimes in the second part if it was a cold morning. Again, it folds down pretty small. I just think there's a lot of value in having a warm neck. There's a lot of blood vessels and arteries and stuff running through there, and you can lose quite a lot of heat there. So keeping things warm is good. Also, we're onto kind of tools now. Actually, no, before we get to the tools, my TCR cap that I wore the first couple of days. I'm not really into caps, race caps, to be honest. I think they're a little bit naff. But I needed a warm head. I was cap 101, so I wore that for a couple of days just while it was cold, and then it got buried in there. But it'd be a nice keepsake. I normally give them all to Dom at Mason Cycles, so that'll probably go on the wall with the rest of the collection. And then we're on to tools. So pumps. So I took one of these e-pumps, these Cyc Plus e-pumps, and the reason I took this is because I figured that on TCR there'd be plenty of opportunity to charge. I wouldn't take it on all races, but it was really good. I mean, it may help me quickly blow up my tyre when I split the sidewall, and also you can set the pressure. So I was able just to keep an eye on pressure. So I've got it set for 45 psi. I think I started with 55 psi in the front and rear. But once I split the tyre, I could only really get it up to 35 psi for the first few hours without it leaking. And then after that, I went up to 45, and I didn't really want to risk putting any more in there. So basically, I just ended up running 45 psi the whole way, and they felt great. So yeah, do really rate these e-pumps. Definitely worth considering. And to be honest, even if you're doing something more remote, say Silk Road, where you wouldn't necessarily take one, I do tend to travel with them because it makes life much easier pumping up your tyres when you get there and setting the correct pressures. I did also take a backup though. You can never rely fully on electronics. So this is a super light carbon pump from Reners. It works, super light, pretty small. I wouldn't probably rely on that fully if I was, just had a hand pump. However, the combination was great. I didn't actually weigh anything on this bike or this setup apart from these. So basically I wanted to know whether these two would be any lighter or heavier than my normal pump that I use. And basically having these two was 10 grams heavier than my other pump. So I figured that it was a no-brainer. You'd probably save way more effort and time by having an e-pump and a backup than the standard pump. So yeah. So those were in there, and then I had some toe covers as well. These have just been tucked in there since pretty much Norway, but I've got one toe cover anyway. Looks like I've lost a toe cover. These are some old Gore ones. They're windproof, just stop the chill on your toes, especially when that first night. So I started the race in those. Looks like I've sacrificed one. Oh no, there it is. So yeah, they've just been tucked away. I did consider taking overshoes, but then I thought it was only really going to be the first 48 hours I'd need something. So yeah, I just took those and got a bit brave. And then I just had my tools. So first thing was this Toe Peak tool. This is the Ratchet Rocket Light DX. So basically it's a mini ratchet set. Probably slightly heavier than just having a multi-tool. However, it makes life so much easier. And as I said earlier in the video, I did do quite a lot of basically a full bike fit as I was going along. So it's so much easier just to get a proper tool set out. Less fiddly, easier to get into the bolts and the aero bars, let alone doing your pedals, taking them off at the end. So yeah, I would definitely recommend something like that. And then I just had this sort of dry bag. This had spares in. So I had, what did I have? I had a spare set of ratchet rings for my free hub, because if that goes wrong, you're not getting any spares. I didn't think it would go wrong, but you can't be too careful sometimes. And then I just had like spare UD hanger, spare brake pads, a little pot full of pads and bolts and things like that. I had a penknife. These things come on most of my trips, to be honest. Penknife. I had my little Leatherman. I had a spare cleat in there. Yeah, loads of stuff really. A few key bolts, chain tool, and yeah, everything I thought I'd need to repair a mechanical if I had one on the road. So yeah, so that was everything in the frame bag. Lastly, we'll move on to the tail fin speed pack, the rear pack. So yeah, this was kind of chunkier layers and some sleeping kit. I'll start on the mesh pocket here. Now you have to have a high-vis vest as part of the mandatory kit for the TCR. I ended up with this, a little custom thing from Albion. I wore it quite a lot. It just goes over your layers, just really bright, got some reflective stuff on there. I think it might be coming to market at some point, watch this space. But in the meantime, you can consider this a prototype, and yeah, definitely rate that. So I tended to keep that in the mesh at the top here. I started with a bit of energy drink, and I've got some rehydration sachets. This is just Diarrhea. It's kind of like for diarrhea. I find it really good when you're really dehydrated. So there's a few left in the back there. This was pretty loaded when I started. There's also a load of litter, which I just ended up chucking in there. Some wet wipes. And yeah, that's pretty much it in there. And also some Nivea Soft moisturiser. So basically the sun was really intense in Norway and the wind was really intense, and my face and lips got totally destroyed in the first couple of days despite using the SPF lip balm and stuff. And I was basically decided I needed to buy some moisturiser. This was the smallest pot I could find in Norway, and it was really expensive, and as a result I really didn't want to chuck it away. So I carried this like extra 200 grams pretty much all the way to Kalamata. It did mean though that I was pretty liberal with it, so I had a pretty good moisturising routine as the race went on, just to try and save some weight. But yeah, this has pretty much been all the way across Europe. So that was my moisturiser. I think actually next time I'll probably take a small thing of moisturiser, because it did actually work. I've not really been into moisturising before, but there we go. Sometimes you learn these things the hard way. And then in the back here, to be honest, all my kit just got shoved in for the journey home. So not all of this was in here the whole time. But this is just an Albion long sleeve merino layer. This wasn't really for riding in, although I thought it might be useful if it was really, really cold in Norway. It didn't come to that, but I had it with me. I mainly took this just for sleeping in, if I was in my bivvy. And also I knew I'd be on the ferry at some point, so I thought it'd be quite useful to just have a different layer so I could wash my kit. Also, I ended up wearing it after hospital when I was sort of laid up for the best part of half a day. So in hindsight, that was really good to take. It doesn't really take much extra weight. So yeah, merino top in there. I actually had two sets of shorts. They're both kind of wedged in here. These are Albion cargo bibs or pocket shorts. I can't remember what they call them. I actually had two sets. I had this set and another set, which I shall dig out. I went for two different colours, kind of for the silly reason that then I knew which was which one I was cleaned, which one I'd worn more. And also, as I said, I had quite a lot of sample gear. So I was running two sample like pads, chamois inside these shorts. One was a bit thicker, one was a bit thinner. I did that on purpose because I figured that actually just taking two pairs of the same shorts means that if you've got like a bit of a sore spot somewhere, it's going to be like rubbing in the same place on both sets of shorts. So my theory was kind of correct, because probably about, I don't know, 8-9 days in, I started just getting a tiny bit of skin rubbing off, and actually just swapping between shorts helped quite a lot. And yeah, I didn't really have any proper saddle sores as such. I also had this this active gilet from Albion. I really rate this stuff. You may have seen the hoodie that I've worn quite a lot in my sort of more off-road races. Didn't really need the hood and everything and long sleeves for this, but I did want a bit of extra warmth for Norway, so I could run this under my other gilet or under my rain jacket. I could sleep in it. Really good. It's also quite good if it's a chilly morning, but you don't really want kind of a windproof layer on. It means you can breathe a bit on the climbs and not just sweat out, but also just keep that heat in a little bit. So that was really good. And that just stayed in this saddle pack. This was the jersey I used. Obviously I was wearing this pretty much all the time, so it's only got shoved in here post-race. This was the Albion UV jersey. Again, really comfortable. It did start more white than this. Obviously you do get quite grubby after a while. It does need to go in the washing machine. But yeah, really good jersey. I rate this. Kind of not too baggy. Fairly good fit. Keeps the sun off. I have finished these races with like weird vent marks and stuff and sunburn and patches on my back, but that stopped all of that, so that was really good. And then I had the Albion all-road rain jacket. This is obviously for if it was raining. Also my warmer layer as well. In conjunction with the active gilet, it does trap quite a lot of heat. So yeah, I use this on early mornings. I got like probably half a day of showers in Sweden. Yeah, and pretty much wore this through a lot of the nights in Norway. I went for orange, obviously just to be bright and be seen. So yeah, really good piece of kit. Doesn't take up too much space. So that was in the back there. And other things clothing wise, I went for some aero socks. Again, these probably either need a wash or the bin. I'm not quite decided which yet. Aero socks, I just decided to go a little bit aero. Mainly so I think I'm faster, but there must be worth something. You know, you see the data from, I know a lot of the data is from like World Tour road racing speeds, but I just think it does add up. Even if it's a tiny thing, the duration, the amount of hours we're riding, even if you get half the gain you get from World Tour speeds, you're still getting a gain. And basically I just couldn't bring myself to ride what I know were slower socks. So went for these were just kind of AliExpress socks, probably seen better days. But yeah, all the gains. The other thing is they were quite tall, so it stuck the backs of my legs getting totally destroyed when it got hot in Greece. And I also, talking of aero gains, I did take one of these aero base layers. Actually, there are some bits of kit that I have lost. So I told you about the gloves. I did actually have a sleeveless Albion base layer. I think that's still hanging up drying in a hotel room in Hungary, which is a little bit annoying. But by the time I'd lost it, then it wasn't really applicable anyway because it was getting quite warm. But I did wear this kind of, these little crop top aero layers. So I wore this on the flatter sections. There was a lot of flat on this TCR. Again, I just figured these ribs are supposed to give you an aero benefit. So you may have seen some of the videos under my jersey, you can see the stripes. Meant to make you a bit faster. Whether it did or not, I don't know, but I think if you think you're going faster, then you're definitely going faster. So I wore that. Other benefit was when it was colder in the north, I had the base layer on, and then this effectively gave me some extra warmth on the top of my arms. So yeah, there was some other practical solutions or reasons, as well as just being super aero. And then finally, well not quite finally, but almost finally, there's an inner tube. I had a couple of inner tubes in there, just with long valves, so I'll leave those in there. But I had my sleeping solution. Now, the plan was to primarily sleep in hotels, which I did. However, it doesn't always work out like that. So I had this bivvy. This was the Soul bivvy. It wasn't the lightest one. It's like one up. I was actually pretty impressed. It's kind of got a mirrored inside, so it does reflect a bit of heat back in. So yeah, it's yeah, I was really quite pleased with that. And then I had my 3/4 length Thermarest sleeping pad. Again, it's got a bit of heat insulation on the bottom. I was pretty much sleeping in most of my clothing. So yeah, I think I slept outside 3 times. And yeah, it was fine. It worked. Doesn't weigh too much. Most of the time was just spent in here, tucked away. And yeah, can't really complain about it. So there we have it. That is my bike and kit list for the 2026 Transcontinental Race. Everything worked really well. I probably would maybe do a few changes going forward. There's kind of a bit of an evolution in the way people are approaching these things. So I think I might try and look at going one by, which I said about before anyway. It just didn't quite happen this time. And I might try and go for a full frame pack next time. But we'll see what happens. But yeah, everything worked perfectly well. These bikes are excellent. Like I say, I've been riding these for 12 years, this model, and I really can't knock it. So, so yeah, keep it going, Mason. And yeah, thanks for watching. Just chuck any questions below in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you've enjoyed this content or my race videos. And yeah, maybe I'll see you again soon with another TCR bike check.